Hey there, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Plain Speak, where we explore the dynamic intersection of e-commerce and customer experience against the backdrop of all the exciting new tech and AI developments in 2024 in customer support. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Liz, for having me. I'm really happy to be here and hopefully can add some value to this conversation.
Super excited. For everyone here who doesn't know John, I am so excited to introduce John McCahan, a seasoned executive and a transformative leader in the world of customer experience and contact center management. With over 2 decades of experience, which we'll hopefully get to hear a little bit about here, John has a remarkable track record of turning around struggling organizations and driving significant improvements in both customer satisfaction, but also broader business performance. Currently serving as the Vice President of Customer and Member Care at FTD, John has been instrumental in leading the company's post-bankruptcy transformation. Under his guidance, FTD has not only streamlined its customer service operations, but also significantly reduced costs while enhancing customer satisfaction. Excited to learn a little bit about his leadership during the company's merger and how that's been critical to really ensuring a seamless transition and a unified customer service approach. Before FTD, John played a pivotal role in the Avon company as the executive director of the Avon Care Center. I love these really awesome brands that we've all, I think, known and used and heard of. And John, I'm excited to get your take on them. Because when you were tasked with revamping Avon's customer care operations, John led a complete transformation that turned a struggling department into a core strength of the brand. All this comes by consolidating technology, relocating key operations to help secure Avon's continued success. I am so excited to have John on the show today. His wealth of wisdom and experience in transforming organizations and elevating customer experience is something that we can all learn from. And I'm really excited to just dive in, hear more about the strategies and insights, but also the lived experiences, John, that have added up to you being an awesome, influential leader in the customer service industry. So, super excited to dive into all of that amazing history and experience. But how are you doing today, John? Where are you calling in from?
So I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, not far from, or right across the Ohio River from Kentucky. So we're in that part of the country where we can experience every type of weather any day of the week. I think the other morning it was 52 degrees, and last week it was 95 with 95% humidity. So yes.
Variety is the spice in life. Hopefully it's still the last bits of summer over there.
Yes.
Well, I'm looking forward to learning more about you, but maybe to start us off, John, do you want to give us a little bit of just your history and your experience and your path in customer service and customer experience over the years?
Sure. If I went back and asked my 22-year-old self, like, what am I going to do in life? It would have never led to a path of customer experience or customer service, or so I thought. So my history starts with the fact that no matter what I've done in life, I've always been given or been put in charge of the problem and been asked to fix it. So I would say that where I learned the most was in my 8 years as an active duty Army officer, where I served in both humanitarian and combat missions throughout the world, and learned a lot about leadership and human nature, but also about how to be a good human when in charge of other humans. And I will say that everything I learned there, I can trace back to what I've done. So my path has gone from the freight industry into retail, into banking, into makeup, which we mentioned at Avon, manufacturing, and then has culminated here at FTD, where I finally was able to do a full transformation in the customer experience, customer service world from start to finish, meaning I came in post-bankruptcy along with McKinsey Consulting and evaluated the problems, came up with a plan, implemented the plan, brought in new technology, and then saw the results of that change, improving our NPS, reducing our refund rates, fixing attrition problems, and probably most importantly to the private equity company is we reduce costs drastically, all while getting better. So that's what has made this one fun, because I got to come execute it and then see and live the results in that change.
I love that, 'cause I really appreciate what you said just now, John, which is, how to be a good human while leading people, right? Because it does feel like so many of these companies that you've worked at, really, the experience is such a huge part of gifting, such a huge part of makeup, such a huge part of even finance, right? Actually, I had a mortgage actually with Fifth Third back in the day that I just realized. And so customer experience is so key to that. But these are also really big projects, right? I mean, the Avon company, I mean, like our mothers and our grandmothers knew about that, right? These are old brands, FTD flowers, clearly going through a tough time, but also brands that probably a lot of people have grown up either ordering from or receiving. When you step into a really big project like that, where do you start? How do you start?
Yeah, again, things appear so complex on the surface, and when in reality they aren't. So I will say it was unique at FTD because I arrived as we were preparing for Valentine's Day. And in the interview process, people say, "Oh, you don't understand our seasonality." I'm like, yeah, I do. I understand seasonality. I know what it's about. Then Valentine's Day hit. 13 times the people needed to execute. Literally, it felt like being in a washing machine with razor blades and trying not to get cut. That's how graphic that whole period of a few weeks and the onslaught of the amount of calls we get. And it just highlighted not only problems, but the different problems of seasonality versus the problems of regular everyday business. And so it's breaking down what are the key things that are causing angst with the customer. Also, what are key things that are causing angst with agents trying to solve those problems for customers? Yep. And breaking those down into simplest forms through root cause analysis to say, okay, why are we getting so many phone calls? Why people want to know where their order is? Well, what do they want to know? They want to know how to track their order. Well, do we give them a way to track it? No, we don't. Okay, let's give them a way to track it. Let's see what happens. Oh, John, we've never done that before. We don't want to do that now. So breaking down those problems, but then gaining engagement, and a phrase I use in life is, there's a reason we in business do what we do. And that history, at a time, it was the right thing to do and the right decision. But as time changes and technology changes, it may no longer be the simplest, easiest way to do something. But because it's been done forever, that's the way it's continuing to be done. But it may not need to be. And so it's that opportunity to evaluate, to do that step, and respect that we did it for a reason at one point. And now we need to change, and here's why, and here's what the result will be in changing. And we can eliminate a step, eliminate some angst with a customer, thus make it easier for a customer to communicate with us. Or if we can eliminate the communication altogether, like that example I mentioned of giving them the ability to track, and they track it for themselves. They don't need to call and find out where it is. They can see where it is.
It seems like it's just the sum of all of these little things, right, that add up to this really big sort of problem that feels kind of impenetrable. Because you just said 13x for Valentine's Day. That is crazy, right? I mean, there is, short of the robots actually taking over one day, I mean, how do you scale that team? But also, how do you know if you're scaling correctly? How do you know when you're in trouble, when you have such a massive spike that you're trying to take care of? How do you even set expectations for the team? Because you probably can't maintain a 5-second pickup time during that entire time period. It's probably not responsible, honestly, to staff for that. How do you think about it?
So it's in advance. So just like, I mean, right now, all of the NFL teams are going through preseason. So they're starting to set their team's expectations, but also their fans. So the fans start seeing what's going on the field and in the preseason games, and like, oh boy, we're in for a tough year, or wow, we're really good, or our starters aren't playing. So it's in advance setting that expectation that things are going to be different. And so when it comes to metrics, it's new people are going to come in and train just to work for those few weeks. How do we keep it as simple as possible in training? Stick to our vision, which is trust your system. Do it, whatever your system, just trust your system. Don't worry about asking questions. Trust the system. And building that into training and building that into everyday life so that we minimize escalations and also help build confidence with people. Like, you did the right thing because you trusted your system. Some of it is one thing we do is make sure we set those expectations of how crazy it's going to be. And thus the colorful way I described it earlier about razor blades in a washing machine means a whole bunch of cuts, but they're all really tiny. And that part of this is what it's going to be like. And you can do it, agent, and business, we can do it too. And so to metrics and setting things up is testing, or the phrase I've used is fail fast, fail early, and fail often, which is really an old military phrase, but it's test and test small. And so testing of what is that threshold that customers are willing to wait. Because during now in August, we have great response times. We're built around a 20-second ASA around a sales call. We're answering email in under 6 hours. We're answering chat in 1 minute and 20 seconds. And we can do that. And we can build everything around that and still get training done and still honor vacation for this time of year, things like that. But when we get into our seasonal peak, it's, hey, look, we're all hands on deck. We're all working. Everybody's getting overtime, setting that expectation in advance, but also knowing that in systems like, hey, how long can we wait on the phone? When do our customers start getting mad at us? And so one thing, for example, we were able to figure that at about 80 seconds, 1 minute and 20 seconds, people start hanging up like crazy. But up until that point, they don't. That our abandon rate remains 4%. And once we get to that 80 seconds, all of a sudden we see a drastic drop off in small tests. So we know that that also happens in real life. So are we at risk? Yes. Will people start hanging up? Yes. But we know that we can allow it to get up to that point. And if it goes over, it goes over. But knowing that in advance and setting up agents, like you're going to get calls back to back to back to back. I know you're looking at emails and you're answering them, but keep your eye on your system when that phone is when the phone's in green and you're in green, grab that call.
Fascinating. So it really is sort of a 360 approach, which I think started here by saying, test it, right? Fail fast, fail early, fail often, figure out where those red lines are. And you said just now for phones, it was 1 minute and 20 seconds, right? Figure out where the lines are. And then really prep the team and say, okay, this is what it's going to look like on the floor, but you know where the guardrails are. So you have a lot of space to sort of color within them as you think through the seasonal stuff. Yeah. Now, how did you figure that out the first time? So 1 minute and 20 seconds, right? I can sort of intuitively be like, okay, I'm a consumer. And if I am, picking up a phone, 1 minute and 20 seconds is probably when I start thinking. But how do you sort of think about in other areas of the business, taking that intuitive feel and either proving or maybe disproving it in some cases?
It's a lot of it is random. So I find that some of the best ideas and some of the best ideas for improvement, and then also a real world approach to what the problem is, are found on the floor of the contact center. And so we're remote. But those agents interact with every system in the business. They interact with customers constantly on a daily basis. And those of us in the career field of customer service know that we don't get a ton of phone calls of people calling and saying how wonderful our company is and how amazing we executed what they ordered or the service they're using. We have to deal with the problems from their perspective. And in that, agents have ideas like, maybe we should do this. And this is a way to prevent this from happening. So they have that thought process. Also, they also want to be more efficient because it can be hard all day long. And I think we've learned over the past several peaks that in testing, a person, sure, during a slow time of year, you can do chat and phone call at the same time because you're really not doing them necessarily at the same time. Yeah. But when you get into it crazy and all of a sudden you're on a phone call and a chat comes in, it's impossible practically to be able to do that repetitively answer somebody over here when you're talking to somebody over here. Though I will say my young adult daughter can do that while she's on her phone.
That is true. There probably are a lot of teens out there that could be killing it multi-channel on customer support. Okay, so that is really practically true, right? So on the front lines, they hear every complaint, every snag, and we often say, look, we have a new engineer. They're spending several days in the seat of a customer service agent, so they sort of understand what the reality is that they're building tools for. But in large customer service orgs like you've worked in, John, how do you balance and actually communicate and aggregate that feedback to where you're capturing everything from the front line, but you're also, because we've talked about this, and I want to hear more of your thoughts on this, align those incentives across the rest of the org, because it's not customer support in an isolated function, it's how you integrate it across the rest of the business.
Right. And so one of those is awareness during the slow times of the year. And one of the things that I did, so as a former Army paratrooper, things are, I boil them down to as simple a fact as I can, but also know that it's about repetition, intuition, and the fact that gravity works. So once you step out of that plane, you're going to the ground. There is no, oh, wait, I want to get back in. It is creating items and tasks around that once we start, we're not jumping back in the plane. Our parachute's out and we're going to hit the ground. With other parts of the business, it has been engagement, not only in the weekly metrics that are important, but also understanding what we face. And so originally, in the crisis of COVID, we knew we weren't going to have enough staff for Mother's Day. And so we came up with this thing, and I stole an old World War II thing because I was building everybody up with these pictures of paratroopers from World War II and the 82nd Airborne and D-Day. And as I was doing that, I came up with Rosie the Riveter and said, guess what? We're going to do jobs we're not ready for. And we brought in people from across the business to work in customer service queues, not on the phone with customers live, but in our back end queues and in our chat sometimes, if they were good at, or in social media. And so the marketing team did a lot of work for us in social media. They pull a 2-hour shift. Like, you're assigned to a 2-hour shift. We're going to train you how to use our social media interface. And you're going to jump in and you're going to handle these questions. And if it's a complex issue, you're going to escalate it to this support group. And we pulled agents to create that support group. But we had the company, including our CEO's spouse even helped. And at the time we put the tech team, of course, and all the back end stuff, but they got to see things like, wait a minute, why is this order constantly being canceled? It turns out that the flowers that were in the recipe were beautiful, but the flowers die in 2 days. The rest of the bouquet is alive for 2 weeks. And the reason we're getting quality calls is because of the ones that die in 2 days. And it became a reality. And wow, that's a lot of calls. No wonder the refund rate is so high.
Right.
So the data of refund rate was the initial indication, but understanding the customers and how they were perceiving it, no matter what you write in the product page about the lifespan of those blooms, it doesn't necessarily translate into a real world because people have their own expectations. Meaning, I bought a bouquet from you, it was very expensive, and I want it to live. And that allows us to then tweak the recipe and get that information out to the rest of the business through the insights that we gather, not only in conversation of the customer contact, email, chat, phone, text, but also in the data that's happening, like refund rates by SKU or positive comments in social media. Like, wow, this thing's going gangbusters. Like, you could probably raise the price and probably add a few more into inventory, and we might be able to really kick off with that item. And so it's different, and that's one way to go about it, getting people engaged into the actual product and the seasonality of it.
Absolutely. And look, what a great lived experience. Now the entire company knows what the reality of customer support and customer service is. That's really cool. Must have been terrifying because, yes, once you've jumped out of the plane, gravity works and you're going to the ground, but who's kicking you out the first time?
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating. Okay, so, when it comes back to this idea of your superpower, John McCahan, when you look across your experience, is definitely very much in coming in, transforming, modernizing, and rebirthing sort of the org, right, in terms of customer support. But that means there's a lot of surface area. And you've talked about how, look, when you break the problem down, it's simpler than you think it is, right? And you talk about how, your number one call reason used to be Wizmos. Right? Tell us a little bit about how you stepped through that. Like, one, how did you surface that problem? And then two, how did you step through that? How did you get the broader business aligned and the teams aligned? And when did you think about tools versus business outcomes?
Okay. So it was literally discovered. Like, everyone knew the number one reason people contact us is because they want to know, where is my order? And there was some historical reservation. Well, of course they are. We know that. That's why they call us. And it was almost an acceptance into, we don't want to prevent it. We're good at answering the question. Let's just
it's what happens.
And it allowed, as part of coming in and working through what was post-bankruptcy, which for any company that's ever gone through that or going through that is a very hard time of hard work and not seeing results, right? Your results are going the wrong direction. And so how do you stay motivated and not abandon ship? And so using the information that's there and going through, okay, we know what this one problem is. How do we look at it? So from a strategic standpoint of transformation is, what is the overall goal, which is, in my world, has always been improve customer experience, reduce the cost of customer servicing.
Yeah.
And in that, like, okay, what makes that up? So there's capital, human capital. How many people does it take to perform the functions? Do we need less? And can we do things differently? The other is technology. Is what's the technology in place? How complex is it? How much does it cost to maintain? What are the software licenses? Can that be consolidated? And can we reduce tech stack? Yeah. What is new technology developing that we could use? So yeah, AI has been around 20 years, but AI has not been on the forefront of what people
used to call it statistics.
Yes, exactly. And it's now to the point of pain. Anyone that had a CEO that read the Klarner report in 5 seconds got an email, like I did, that was, when are you going to get AI for everything? And literally, like, okay, that's not how it works, but let me walk you through it. But it's that, what tools are available now, and the other piece is, what tools might be available in the future when you can do it. And I will use the FTD example. Was, we were in multiple phone systems. We were in 2 different chat systems that were tied into our CRM, and we were not in SMS text, even though we knew we should be. And email was Outlook based, and it was fairly complex and how those things got worked. And then we had this crazy backend thing that was our messaging with our florists, which is really internal messaging. And it's how they communicate on their orders, because they're not, an FTD florist is a member of FTD. They're not part of the company.
It's a two-sided marketplace. Yeah.
Yeah. And so looking at all of that, and what are the solutions out there, and how do we consolidate this in a way that, one, makes it easy for the customer to receive information and communicate with us, but also for the agents and for the business to be able to operate the same system as seamlessly as possible and move from channel to channel. So that surface area then goes, okay, well, now we know we have this technology, but to interface our FTD technology, our back end had to be able to interface with it, and it couldn't. So I had to delay when I implemented our new communications, omni-channel communications for the contact center, because we had to fix the order management system interface first, because otherwise it wouldn't do us any good.
Right.
And so creating steps of what must happen first before you can go on and do the other things. Like you aren't going to put the roof on the house if you haven't even laid the foundation or built the walls, because it'd just be silly. And that's that process of then, okay, wow, we have to wait 18 months before we can do this. I can see the future and the success of it and the ease, but it's going to take us 18 months to get there. So let's communicate across the business. Let's work with agents and say, as we work through this is, that's the future, but the truth is it's 18 months away. So far beyond any of our foreseeable target ranges and the effectiveness of the weapon we're shooting. It's way out there. Don't even worry about it yet, but know that it's coming and know that we need to gear towards that future so that we're looking strategically versus tactically. And that becomes that balance of what can we do quickly, but is it too tactical and will it have a long-term benefit?
Yes, the cost benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. And with FTD, it was always then how do we cross, or any company has been how to cross collaborate with those different business units, because tech has a roadmap. Tech knows what they want to do. They want to reduce their tech stack, but it's in their timeline. And the marketing team wants to be able to do things with customers and directly to customers. And they're focused on creating hype, creating sales, creating loyalty and customer retention, not necessarily the parts that customer service has to deal with. And so I like to think of those, is an offer simple that goes out. And an example of something we tested small was an option in around, it was pretty cool actually at first, which was let's do free shipping and just pay for the product. That was easy, right? Free shipping.
Yeah.
Pretty easy to execute, pretty easy to explain. A couple of months later, when you do pay for shipping only, free product. Now everybody's confused. Even customers, they're like, wait, what? I don't understand. The flowers are free. You're just paying for the shipping and the fees. And getting agents to understand that, like we had big flashing where like shit, they pay, like they're getting free product, they're paying for shipping. Agents were confused. They're like, I don't understand this. And it ended up being so confusing that it didn't work. Like it wasn't a big boon to increasing sales or bringing in new customers that we thought it might be from the beginning. So it's learning from that at a small scale that, wow, it didn't work. That was too confusing. Great idea, but didn't produce revenue or the end result that it was designed.
Yeah. And I actually love that example because it's such a great example of something which on the front end seems just like a small marketing tweak, right? But as you just pointed out, it really does actually follow on then to customer service needs to understand, right? Sales and tech, they need to understand, the numbers need to make sense. Even these things that seem like, okay, marketing is just running an experiment, really cascades across the rest of that org.
Yes.
Right?
And
it's almost like, yeah.
It's a good idea until you actually realize it wasn't. For example, as a young lieutenant, one time I had my platoon blow up a stairwell doorway. We ended up going up the stairs. We couldn't go upstairs anyhow. We were trapped. But that idea of like, what a great idea, but then turned out to be a horrible idea.
Yeah, but like create these nice safe spaces where you can do that because, in a lot of ways, it almost seems like you have different teams that are all building different parts of a roller coaster. But you have to keep in mind that, the tracks need to connect at some point and the entire ride needs to make sense, right? That's honestly one of the things that for me is really exciting about this new era of statistics and data science called AI that we're in, is that all the data that used to live in silos, right, is finally getting connected across departments in a way that hopefully we can actually just see that entire customer journey throughout the roller coaster and see that transform the entire org, which I am very excited about. John, we have our rolling questions of the week, but before that, any closing thoughts, words of advice, technologies that you're excited about moving into holiday season 2024?
Yeah, just that understand that the problem is probably simpler than you think, and going into the holiday, setting along those expectations early, getting people excited to where it becomes, like we always say, it becomes the badge of honor. I worked through Valentine's Day, I worked through Mother's Day, and it's like, it was really hard and it wasn't very fun. I'm not looking forward to next year, but then it becomes no, actually it was. We learned so much and we were successful at a higher volume than we were in our regular day-to-day. And embracing those seasonal agents from the world of customer service of like, we are so glad you're here and we're going to try to listen to you and make your jobs as easy as possible and interact so that maybe you'll come back for our next season. And that is always fun when it's like, oh, I can skip training. I was here last season and I want to do it again. Almost becomes you want to do what's hard. That's kind of neat.
That's true. Build up for the party, make everyone feel welcome. And that actually bridges perfectly into your rolling question of the week from Eli Weiss, who joined us last week. He is Eli's VP of Retention Advocacy at Yotpo. And I know this is very relevant going into Q3 and Q4. John, what are some final thoughts on what you do when you have a team that's just exhausted, overwhelmed? For e-commerce, maybe it's the break between Thanksgiving and Christmas and not feeling inspired. How do you get them wired?
One of those is starting like understanding what is hard. And I will say in our world, customer service calls on those peak days are hard. Because it may be a guy who waited till halftime at the Super Bowl to buy flowers for his significant other and it fails. That's one situation. But there's also possibly when a funeral could potentially be a failure there. That's a very different sentiment and process that a person and a family is grieving over, and how to shift gears from hyper solving the Valentine's Day problem to actually the funeral that happens to be on February 14th. And helping agents get there through training, but just rewarding when they do the sympathetic moment and solve that problem so that there's genuine respect given for that funeral and the flower display that was delivered. So I will say one of the things we do is having paid attention to the channels is take someone out of the phone channel and put them in the sales side, which can be a little more fun. And they can have fun with, like, for example, Valentine's Day. Like, really, you just said, this is your wife and you've been together for 25 years and you want the cheapest bouquet we have? Come on. Like, you need to step it up here. And having fun in that channel, or going into chat for a little bit if they're good at it, or even social media, where in social media we tend to get more thumbs up, more these are the most beautiful things, or the bouquet showed up at the funeral and was just absolutely amazing and portrayed the spirit of my grandfather, and therefore I thank you, FTD. So dealing with those things lets agents shift, and it makes their day diverse because it's a hard day. And I would say mixing up channels, mixing up tasks, going from complex tasks to easy task, back end work, support line. If they're good at helping others, get them in the support line for a while so they can help others before you put them back into a production line. We also, one other thing I'd like to leave everybody is, like, think around flexible work hours and split shifting and how to gain extra hours, and having, we're all of us in contact centers understand the power of food and the power of dress up in costumes, and how to have fun in those areas as well. Like, I will say, though, having a dress up as Cupid contest doesn't always end the way you think it would.
Oh, no. But it sounds like you just need to make time to stop and smell the flowers, perhaps.
Brilliant.
I love it, John. Thank you for joining us. We did have one quick audience question pop up here. If you have an answer, Brett Fraser is curious, what percentage of your seasonal agents do tend to come back year after year?
So year after year is probably 20%.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, season to season can be a little higher. We tend to, from Christmas to Valentine's Day, we actually get around 40% to 50%, depending. We saw really high numbers in COVID just because remote, easier work and part-time. But we see then from Valentine's Day to Mother's Day, that's where we also get that 40% now. We've had that recently, and it reduces on training expense, but it also means they know what they've been through.
Yep.
And they understand how hard and how much the volume goes and how hold times. And it helps us because there's Valentine's Day is one day. Valentine's Day, and I'm gonna say something controversial. Guys are not the best shoppers in the world. They wait till the last minute and they don't know what they want. So you have that going on at Valentine's Day.
Yep.
Mother's Day, more flowers are in bloom. but
Oh,
spread out over a longer time period. It's always a Sunday.
right.
Moms can be more forgiving, and there becomes a world of delight, but it's set and it's the same Sunday every year. And so we're ready for it. And that allows those agents that go through Valentine's Day to go through Mother's Day and go, wow, this was easier. And we say, but it's even higher volume. Like, and they're like, no, it isn't. It wasn't that hard. And in reality, there was more volume for Mother's Day. But that Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter, Mother's Day period really is where our spikes are going crazy. And then we get into summer wedding season and then the fall. And it's how the cyclical world of flowers. Yes.
And because I bet that 40% that return, their survivability through that season is like 100% or something incredible.
I will say the challenge there is if you switch technology systems in between, then all of a sudden, then it's a whole new world.
Yeah, totally fair, totally fair. And I bet things are crazy if Valentine's Day is on a Sunday.
When it's yes, exactly. I will tell you that makes it absolutely crazy. Or when they changed the Super Bowl date, pushed it back. And when the Super Bowl was on the 13th of February and Valentine's Day was the Monday after, and you have a lot of guys who at halftime go, oh, I think I should buy flowers. And then they can't because every online shop is sold out. And then they're mad. So they call, like, I have to buy flowers tomorrow. You're going to ruin my relationship.
It's going to be a grocery store Valentine's Day bouquet. Love it. We are way over. There's so much good stuff here, John, to cover. But last question for you. We have Carolyn Capitolo from Intelligent Foods joining us next week. What's your rolling question for her? What would you like her to share, either professional, personal, or anything in between?
Yeah, I'm gonna run with the same theme of motivation here. And we all know people do not like change. So in a complex integration, what are the top 3 things to keep everyone moving forward?
Can't wait to find out. John, it's been a pleasure learning about your adventures through customer experience. Thank you for sharing some of your insights on how to navigate change one step at a time when modernizing customer experience organizations, not just within the support org, but understanding the drivers throughout every business function. Thank you for joining us. To our listeners, join us for our next episode of Plain Speak on August 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll be welcoming Carolyn Capitolo from Intelligent Foods, which is behind meal kit brands you love like Sunbasket and Gobble. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the last bits of summer, and we'll see you next time.